DoD policy and that the Army policy mirrors.
Thank you. I'll yield back.
Mr. Gaetz.
So General Matlock, after years of the Army wrongly telling over 10,000 soldiers that someone having a pro-life license plate might make them a terrorist, was anybody fired?
Representative, again, the chain of command is the responsible agent for adverse actions or personnel actions, and I'm not going to comment on what they've done or not done. That resides with the chain of command.
Well, don't you think that has failed? Because wasn't the obligation to stop this nonsense also with the chain of command?
The chain of command took upon receiving the report of the poorly developed training materials, the chain of command took immediate
I tell you,
action.
in the United States Army, 8 years might be immediate, but it doesn't seem all that immediate to me. I mean, does years and years of doing this seem like the chain of command was immediately responsive to this errant action to you?
Representative, we recognize that that is a very long period of time.
Okay, so we'll
and that's a
dispense with immediate
significant
then. Okay, so you're
failure.
kind of playing games. I mean, I think the Congress deserves to know, after you all screwed up with 10,000 soldiers, whether you fired anyone, whether you suspended anyone, whether anyone got a demotion in rank, or what the consequence was. Like, you don't get to just say it's our chain of command and it's not Congress's business when you screw up to this magnitude. Like, does that not register with you?
Representative, it does. That's why I'm here today.
Right, so just tell us, did anyone get fired, suspended, demoted? Any of those three?
Representative, again, those training materials were very poorly prepared.
Right, but we don't
They were
believe,
used
so
for a
this is
long-
what's going on, General. We don't believe that your chain of command approach is going to be sufficient to deal with this if you play hide the ball on what the consequence was. And it sort of seems to be a DoD-wide problem that, you know, that people who express policy or scripture aligned with Christian faith get demonized and attacked. I mean, we saw that in the United States Navy when the SEALs wanted to have an exception for the vaccine, and then your own Inspector General had to say that they were improperly treated. We saw it in the Marine Corps when someone posted a Bible verse and was then subjected to disciplinary action. And now here in the Army, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I'm at a loss because they won't even tell us what they've done. Now I'm wondering how this emerged. It was in 2017. Who was the Chief of Staff of the Army then?
And I believe in 2017, General Milley was the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Oh, well, interesting. Do you think this is happening elsewhere, this kind of stuff?
Representative, in the United States Army, no, I don't think it is.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'd do, Mr. Chairman. I would demand answers to the questions that we're asking. This is, I don't even know how to use my last minute and a half of time because they're not going to answer the question on what consequence. And if the consequence isn't public, it doesn't function as a sufficient deterrent. Like what you guys do when you allow this to happen for years with no consequence, and then 8 years later or whatever, when you're called out on it, you say, well, there's a consequence, but we won't tell you what it is, then you increase the recidivism of this type of behavior. And not for nothing, but it's one of the reasons why in some of the key demographic areas that the Army is traditionally drawn from to fill its ranks, you're struggling right now. So I think we're owed answers to these questions, and frankly, I would start fencing money at the United States Army until we get those answers. I yield back.
Dr. Schaefer, I have a couple questions for you. Thank you both for your presence and your testimony here today. Under the leadership of SecDef Austin, the Department of Defense and each of the services has undertaken a host of actions to confront legitimate threats of extremist activity and
started. And that's, I guess, asking you, Dr. Schaefer, do you feel confident that the updated extremist policy, and it's been updated a number of times, you spoke about the 14 criteria, do you feel confident that this updated policy will weed out any extremism that's in the military, that's in the Army?
I certainly think that it tightens up the definition more than it did, so I think it alleviates confusion, and again, really maintains the focus not on individual circumstances, but widespread discrimination, not individual cases of discrimination. Those can be dealt with in separate complaints processes.
With all due respect, I think that given the gray area on active participation, several of the definitions that folks have asked you to, opine on or cases, there still seems to be enough of a gulf that you could drive a Mack truck through. And I think that extremism, what concerns me is that I have service members in my district who have complained about racist comments and extremism that they've experienced themselves. And we can't get to that if we're not addressing the fact that there was a problem and that problem was fixed. And instead, I think that problem, I don't think that problem has been fixed. I mean, this is about accountability, right? We have a job to oversee and to provide oversight. And when we're not getting the answers, we're not getting clarity on what actually happened and what our response and solution is, it just makes it harder for those of us who have legitimate complaints from our service members about extremism to actually have those addressed. Mm-hmm. So I think that, the 14 criteria, the updated 14 criteria, the reporting requirements, they add another layer. I don't think that they actually solve the problem, and I think that we owe it to our military and to our service members to really get to the bottom of this and the root cause of it. General Matlock, I think that, I wanted to just ask you what matrix are we using to measure the prevalence of this, the prevalence of this problem. I know that we have lots of updated policies and reporting requirements, but has the Army considered alternatives to its current data collection, like, conducting surveys that can identify the problems across the services? I mean, how are we getting at the root problem?
Representative, I would, on your previous, if I may.
Sure.
I think the reporting changes and the much more clear,
They are.
defined
I
reporting
agree with you.
requirements actually go a very long way to your concern, meaning that internal to the Army, those reports are mandated to be delivered to the right agencies so that second and third looks occur.
And I think that those are
the
great,
local
but if
level.
there's still gray area, people don't have, that leads to ambiguity, and that also leads to subjectivity. And I think that, as Dr. Schaefer was saying, we're trying to not categorize one particular race, or we're not trying to, but rather trying to weed out the activity itself. And so, with all due respect, sir, I think that, the subjectivity is a problem that all of us here have. And I don't think that we're adding to that concern by not fully answering the questions that are being put forth by my colleagues. And that frustrates me because I think that I want my service members' complaints to be addressed. And it waters down their complaints if people feel like they're not being heard, or if people don't think that there exists any extremism in the military. And you and I both know that that's not the purpose of the military, and it doesn't help good soldiers to be, it doesn't help us protect and defend the homeland when people feel that the soldiers that they're next to may not necessarily have their back. And so this is a deeper problem, but as far as data collection, are you satisfied that we're on the right track?
Representative, for data collection on extremist actions or allegations, very satisfied with the procedures we have in place. And to your point, we do have other means of measuring morale, cohesion, and discipline in our formations.
So, Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I just wanted to echo the sentiments that have been felt on both sides of the aisle, that we're really not getting to the root. We're not getting the answers we need to really evaluate extremist activities. And I think that until we get that, it's hard for us to continue to proceed and it definitely does undermine, service members' confidence in their ability to actually get incidents like this resolved. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. I want to thank the members for participating, and I want to thank both of you for being here today to be a part of an important discussion. General, I respect you. I respect the uniform that you wear. But your inability to discuss accountability with us today, I think, greatly undermines your position, your authority, your leadership. I think it's embarrassing to the United States Army. 10,000 soldiers were erroneously trained, and you told us that those 10,000 soldiers had never been notified that they were erroneously trained. The first time that I asked you the question about accountability, you said that the service member who created the slide deck received corrective training. And then when I asked you the question again, you said it's against the policy of the Army to discuss accountability, which is just not true. That is a very untrue statement. I mean, if a military court-martial occurs, that's public. If non-judicial punishment occurs, that's published without the names associated. I think the reason that you can't answer the question is because you know, and we know, that no one has ever been held accountable for this training that started in 2017 and occurred until a few months ago. I think that's a big embarrassment for the United States Army. You heard bipartisan frustration today about that fact, lack of accountability. It's dangerous. It's a bad pattern. We hope you do something about it, but I can assure you this committee is going to continue to provide the oversight of situations like these to prevent them from happening again. So with that, thank you for being here. The hearing is adjourned.